Hello friends, in this video we are going to use Python to create a web application. So basically we will be building a Flask application and deploying a Flask application using Docker, and we will also deploy it using on Docker Hub, and at the end we will deploy it on Heroku. ठीक है. तो basically I hope you are aware of Python language. Python is a very popular programming language, and if you have not installed Python, you can download Python. So head over to here. So since I have already installed Python, so I don't need to download it. But as you can see, the latest Python version is 3.13. So you can download it from here. So I'm not going to download because I already have it. Let me show you. So if I type Python, so I have 3.12.4, but the latest version is 3.13. Cool. Let's exit it. Okay, 3.13. Now let's install Flask. If you have Flask already installed, you don't need to, but let's do it. Pip install Flask. Okay, so it is installed. So if you have ever built a web application with Python, chances are that you used a framework to achieve this. Either you can use Flask, Django, Fast API, anything. So Flask is an open source, beginner friendly web framework. It's an open source, beginner friendly, built on Python programming language. Flask is suitable when you want to develop an application with a light code base rapidly. So you should use Flask when you build an application with a very light code base and rapidly, quickly. Okay. And Docker, as you know, it's an open source tool. Docker is also open source. Flask is also open source, and Python is also open source. So Docker enables you to containerize your application. So basically, we will use Docker to containerize our Flask application. Okay, we can build, test, deploy, and manage our applications in an isolated environment. So Docker provides isolated environment and containers. So download Python, install Flask. So in this video, we will be using Visual Studio Code, which is VS Code. So you can install VS Code. So I think it's very basic. So I mean, you can download it. Okay, download VS Code. You can download it from here and install it. It's very easy. Cool. So let's create a folder for ourselves. Let's create it here only. Let's name it Flask app and Docker. We will be using Docker and Heroku for deployment. Okay, so let's open it. You have created a folder. Let's open it in VS Code. Flask is open source, Docker is open source, Python is open source, everything is open source. It is free. So inside this folder, create view.py. Okay. Now let's import Flask from Flask import Flask and render template also. Let's import render template. So I have already IntelliSense in VS Code. Let's import operating system OS. Create a app using this Flask. It is already giving me auto suggestions. Now let's create a function which is home. Here we are returning render template. Return render template. Let's name it as index.html. So this is our home view. You can basically give a route which is app.route, and you can specify the name here. So you can say uh, whatever web application you want to say. What can we think about it? App.route Geo Hotstar. Geo Hotstar. Okay, we will ask money from Ambani. So at the end, you need to specify name if it is a main file. Then basically you can also get the port and run it. So you can get the port information int os dot environment dot get. Okay, port, and by default you can say 5000. Flask application default port is 5000. Let's do app.run. So app.run, we can mention debug here, debug true. Host, we can mention anything. Let's mention 0.0.0.0, which is localhost, and let's mention port is equals to port. Okay, so basically here port we value is coming from here, and this is coming from environment variables, and default value is 5000. So if environment variable is not set, the port will be 5000. So as of now we are not setting the environment variable. So here if you see, the app.route annotation serves to direct the request to a mapped URL, so it will redirect to here. In this case the provided URL is this slash geohotstar. This annotation has also a method parameter that takes a list of HTTP methods to specify the permitted method for the provided URL. By default, the get method is the only permitted HTTP method. So this is a get request. Here is an okay, so we can also do post and get for these. Let me do it. App.root, we can specify methods. Post also and get also. Cool. We have specified methods here. So this home function is bound to the URL provided in the app.route. Annotation will run when you send a GET request to this route. The function returns a call to render template that in turn renders the content of the index.html file. So let's create the index.html file. So index.html we can create under the templates directory. So always create a templates directory here and then create a index.html. Okay, so I have a shortcut. If I write this, I will get a lot of HTML boilerplate code in the VS Code. You can also do the same thing. Title, you can say my first Flask application. In the body, you can say h1, and this is a Flask app container containerized with Docker. Flask app with Docker. Cool. So let's create a requirement.txt file. So this file contain the list of packages and dependencies that you need to run your project and their respective versions. Okay, so press Control and tilde. This will open this thing. We are in the root directory, Flask app Docker. Let's do this thing. Pip freeze requirements.txt. Requirements, it is a plural. Okay, so you can see we have created a requirements.txt. You can see we have lot of files, but the thing is I have installed a lot of Python packages on my local system, but you don't need these many packages. So if you want to install the packages contained in this file in another project, you can copy the requirements.txt file to the desired project and run the following command. This thing, pip install -r and then requirements, like this. If you do this, it will install all these packages. Okay, so the advantage of doing this is that you don't have to run the pip install command for each package. You can simply do pip install -r requirements.txt. So remember two commands, pip freeze greater than requirements.txt and pip install -r requirements.txt. These two are very important commands. So if you see these version numbers, these can be different on your system because these version numbers generated in the requirements file may be different from what is written, because this depends on the type of application you are building and the version of the packages you have installed on your system while building your app. Let's do Docker containerization so that we will basically package our application with all the runtime dependencies, so that all the runtime dependencies are these things, okay, that are required to make it self-sufficient. Therefore, the application will run without needing to worry about incompatibilities with its host environment. You can test that the application works before you proceed to containerizing it. Run this command, okay? Let's run this command. Python view.py. Cool. Allow. So it is running on this address. Let's go to this address. Not found because our home address is different. Home address is Geo Hotstar. If I write Geo Hotstar, you can see Flask app with Docker. This is our home app route, app.route, and we can use methods post and get here. So if we change here something, my best Flask application and Flask app with Heroku and Docker, we save it. Now if you see, if you reload it, you can see it is changed. Now let's create a Docker file. You can install Docker on your system. Download Docker, this thing. Install Docker desktop on Windows. You can click on here and it will start downloading. Okay, you can install it. It's very easy. After installing Docker from here, let's create a Docker file in the root directory. Docker file. In the Docker file, we should start from here, from base image. Base image is what? Python. We are pulling it from the Docker hub. 3.8, I think 3.8. Let's pull this thing. So we are pulling this Python image. Now let's copy the requirements file into this image. So for copy, you need to write this copy dot slash requirements.txt, requirements.txt slash app slash requirements.txt. We are copying it from the root directory to this, into this Python image. So we have copied the requirements file into this image, Python 3.8-alpine. Let's go into this working directory. Work directory path is basically slash app. Now let's install the dependencies and packages in the requirements file. So we need to run pip install -r. Earlier I showed you this thing. Requirements.txt. It will install all the dependencies and packages. Now copy every content from the local file to the image. Local, whatever we have, everything we will copy. Copy dot local everything, we will copy it to app. Okay. Now let's configure the container to run in an executed manner. Okay, basically we need to run this command python view.py. Executed manner, so we can specify entry point. Entry point is Python and command is view.py. So these we need to write this much code in Docker file cmd view.py. So basically line number one, we are pulling the Python image because Docker has lot of existing images. So we will install a Python image and install it in our Docker image. So Alpine is a lightweight Linux distro that will serve as the operating system on which we install our image. And this copy requirements.txt, you know what it is doing. It is basically copying this file into the Docker, inside the Docker. Cool. Now let's build the Docker image. So let's stop the here. What we can do, we can do Docker image build. We are basically building the image. Docker image build hyphen t. So we can tag this as what we should tag. Flask docker application. ठीक है, Flask docker application, and we will copy this thing. Now we are running this command, it will build the image with this name, Flask docker application. It is doing something, it will take 1 or 2 minutes depending on the internet speed. Cool, something happened, it is not able to run this command. Because I have lot of packages, maybe that's why. So let's do one thing, let's remove some of those packages. Okay, what we need is very less number of packages. We only need Flask, Jinja 2, Flask, let's cut it, let's paste it at the start. We need this click and colorama. Cut it, paste it at the start. We need it's dangerous Jinja to markup safe, like these things. Jinja 2 job liblets also, it's dangerous. Okay, paste it at the start. We need markup safe work geok. markup save. What else we need? G unicorn is one of the main thing we need. G unicorn. Okay, it is not there. Hmm. Okay, so what we can do, we can mention G unicorn if it is not there. G unicorn. Let's have 20.1.0 work geok. Work geok is there. Let's copy. Cool. Let's remove these packages now. Now it should work. Okay. Let's build the Docker image again. So we are running pip install -r requirements.txt. Cool, it is done. It is done. Okay, successfully done. You can just copy these content and paste it in the requirements.txt file. So we have successfully built the image. The next step is to run an instance of the image. So let's run docker run -p. This is a port 5000 colon 5000 -d -d, and the name of our application, what is it? This thing. Okay, this is how we are going to run. If we do docker ps, it will show that it is running. So this command runs the container and its embedded application on port 5000. The first 5000 is the port that we allocate to the container on our machine. The second 5000 is the port where the application will run on the container. So let's go ahead and do this thing. Instead of this, let's do it localhost. So it is working fine. You can see it is working because the container is running. Docker container is running. Our application, you see, I have not done python view.py. This is docker container. Now let's deploy this application to Docker Hub. So Docker Hub, basically Docker registry, is a community of repositories where Docker users create, test and manage containers. If you have worked with GitHub, this section will be very familiar to you. So let's create a repository on the Docker Hub. Okay. So let's go to Docker Hub. Sign up. Continue with Google. Continue. ठीक है. So we can create repository step. Just a minute. Repository. Okay, maybe here. Let me see. Docker home. Docker hub. So basically we need to go to my profile. So we can have repositories here. This tab, create a repository. Let's create a new repository. Let's name it as first repository. So we can push a new image to this repository using this CLI. We need to tag and then we need to push. Let's keep it as public. Create repository is created. Now let's go to VS Code. In the command line, let's do Docker login. So log in with your Docker ID to push and pull images from Docker Hub if you don't have a Docker ID. Okay. So what is my username? I think this is my username. What is my password? Succeed. Login succeeded. Okay. Now let's push our image to Docker Hub. So there is a standard format that the image name has to follow. Format name is specified. So basically we need to write Docker tag. So Flask doc, what is our thing here? What is our Flask Docker application? Okay, let's tag this. Now let's push it to Docker Hub. Docker push. Got it. Basically we need to tag somehow different actually. Docker Hub username is Yash M3828 slash this thing. Let's do it this way. Now let's do Docker push. We have only tagged our application by prefixing with the username. Now let's push it this thing. So we are doing pushing. Okay, it is pushed. Great. Let's refresh it. You see, we have our first repository but where it is pushed? Tags, builds, nothing. Repositories. Okay, so this is our repository. Hmm. So basically, we don't need to create repository from here. If we do docker tag and docker push, ठीक है ना, तो यहाँ से भी push हो जाएगा वो अपने आप create कर देगा repository इधर. So as of now, we have two repositories. Cool. Deploying our app to Heroku. Let's deploy the app to Heroku. So Heroku is a cloud platform, where developers can build and run applications in the cloud. If you don't already have an account, you can create Heroku. But I have the Heroku account. Let me do Heroku login. This is a problem with your login. Okay, no worries. Sign up. Python. Create account. Okay, so I have created an account. Let me go there. So this is my account. Let me activate it. Set a password. Confirm password. Set password and login. Close. Login. What is happening? One time connect and authenticate. Connect your. What is this? Cancel. So I want to. I don't want to do this. Why it is forcing me? One time password generator. ठीक है यही करना पड़ेगा और क्या. So let me download and install an authenticator app. स्कैन करना पड़ेगा. You need to download it. Okay. And verification code डालना पड़ेगा. I can't scan the QR code. ऑथेंटिकेटर ऐप है क्या? ये गूगल प्ले पे है. ठीक है, लेट्स डाउनलोड इट. So I'm installing this authenticator app, two-factor authorization. Heroku has done something, I don't know what is this. So basically you can register and get it done. Because we want to deploy our application on Heroku, that's why we are doing it. Otherwise, no need. It is asking for credit or debit card. So let's do one thing. Let's not deploy it on Heroku because it is annoying. I don't want this two-factor authorization. It's seriously annoying. So we have already deployed it on this Docker Hub. That's great. So I can tell you how can you deploy it on Heroku. After enabling this two-factor authentication, sorry, we can log in into Heroku using Heroku login. We can create Heroku app using Heroku create and app name. We need to create a proc file. Proc file contains commands that your application runs on Heroku when starting up. So we need to create a proc file without an extension. So that add the following to the file: gunicorn app colon app. Remember to create a proc file. Now push the app to Heroku using Heroku container push web. Release the image. Heroku container release, and your web application will be live on herokuapp.com. I wish I could show you these things, but it is annoying. Seriously, it is very annoying. Why it is asking, I don't understand. For I don't need a verification, okay? It is seriously very, very annoying. So I'm sorry, I can't deploy it on Heroku. But I hope you can deploy it on Heroku using some basic commands, using a proc file, using Gunicorn. So yeah, that's it about this video. Thank you. Thank you, and please like and subscribe. Thank you very much.